Chapter 44-42. Sword Unparalleled, Take Command. Suddenly, Jian Wu's eyes twinkled, and he arched his hand. This time he went to the extraterritorial battlefield. He was bound to get it, one to suppress the riots, and the other to himself. Regarding Master Xuanyi, he had long been guessing. With Xuanyi's strength, if Xuanyi is still in this universe, I am afraid that there will be absolutely no news at all. It is very likely that Xuanyi was in the extraterritorial battlefield. Alas, he should inquire about the news of the Emperor. Finally, his strength has now fallen into the bottleneck stage. Even if he stays in the universe blindly, he will not be of much use. Whether it is the Diwu Temple or the Dragon Clan, he has an invincible supreme power. With his current strength, he can't counteract what threats do these two top forces have. Instead of that, it would be better to go to the extraterritorial battlefield and enhance the strength in the Battle of Killings. Besides that, there is one more point. Is that Ice Supreme? Wu Jian Wushuang remembers that the Emperor Taishu said before leaving that he would take the Bingyu Supreme to the extraterritorial battlefield. Qi Jian Wushuang once swears to heaven, this life and this world will cut the Ice Supreme and others. Otherwise he will fall to Juyo. Vow not to be human. His sword is unparalleled, never just talking. Extreme blood, what about me? The king of Jiujie said beside him. He saw that Shuebwa Supreme arranged Jian Wushuang, but did not mention himself, and he frowned. Bloodwave Supreme glanced at King Jiujia, and he could not help but grin at the corner of his mouth. King Jiujia was also a stubborn character, afraid that he would not be allowed to stop, and could not stop, but nodded helplessly. Okay, you and swords are perfect, just go together. King of 9 robberies, take your life. Suddenly, a slight delight flashed in the eyes of King Jiujia, and he arched his hand. Well, now that this matter is finalized, let's step back. Sun Xiebo rubbed his eyebrows, and his face was a little tired. Now Gvu is sleeping, he is in charge of the Palace of Life, and he is really tired. Yes, everyone retreated. When he walked to the gate of the Supreme Temple, King Jiujia glanced at Jian Wushuang and smiled lightly. Jian Wushuang, the strength of this seat is not as good as you now, but we can compare them. Who will be in the extraterritorial battlefield? There are more false slayers in the slain virtual universe. Wu Jianshuang heard the words, and could not help showing an interested look in his eyes, and nodded. Okay. Well, Jian Wushuang, Xianyang Starfield is not close here. You and I will go back and prepare each other, and let us go together 1 year later. After a few words of embarrassment, the two broke up separately. After returning to the manor in the 6th mountain range, the situation that Jian Wushuang is about to go for an expedition told Lung Rushuang that suddenly, Lung Rushuang couldn't help it. Fortunately, Cold as a Frost is not a man of arrogance. Despite the reluctance in his heart, he had to instruct Jian Wushuang in his mouth to be more careful. Wu Jian saw nothing but sighed. Over the years, the two have always been together and separated, with few chances of intimacy. Also in the last year, I will be with you. Wu Jianwushuang made a decision in his heart. 1 year later, outside the Palace of Life, Wu Jianshuang and King Jia bid farewell to the Bloodwave Supreme and others who came to see him off, and immediately drove the spacecraft towards the Xianyang Ferry and Xianyang Star Field. On the deck of the cosmic boat, Yan Jian Wushuang stood side by side with King Jiujia. One was in a wide black robe, wearing a hood, blocking most of his face, and the other was in white clothes, winking with snow, his eyes blanched, and his white hair hanging down. The two are black and white, but they are the two most arrogant in the universe. Sword unparalleled, there is almost no cultivation of the vein in the extraterrestrial battlefield, and they can release a strange light wave, which is not easy to deal with. The king of Jiujia took the hand and said lightly, although he is arrogant, he is not reckless. In the past year, he has also collected a lot of news about the virtual universe. The more I know, the more dignified and angry he is. The monks of the imaginary universe are cruel and addictive by nature, and treat the people in their universe almost to the extreme. I do know how many cosmic strongmen are killed to death in every chaotic era. Strange light waves. Wu Jinsho raised an eyebrow, and a curious expression appeared in his eyes. Yes, King Jiuzai nodded his head and replied, "The monks of the virtual universe have an associated supernatural power, which is the weird light wave. We call this weird light wave virtual explosion. Because of the existence of this virtual explosion, the vagrants of the imaginary universe are often better than the monks in the same realm of our universe." Wu Jinshuang nodded and nodded, but he didn't care. In the same realm, no matter how strong the monk in this virtual universe, Jian Wushuang did not think he would be stronger than him. This is his confidence. Besides that, the powerful men of the void universe look strange, with 3 heads and 6 arms, and headless axemen. In short, they look more like evil, but one thing is that they are very good at identifying them. Every person who has a virtual universe has long marks on their shoulders. I don't know who is below the Supreme, but above the Supreme, there is a long mark on the shoulder of the Supreme, and there are 2 long marks on the Medium Supreme, and so on. The vagrants of invincible supreme strength are 5 long marks. The King of 9 Emperors continued to speak. Understood. Wu Jianwushuang nodded. Alas, as the two discussed, they flew towards the Xianyang starfield, and the speed was not slow, as if a meteor crossed the sky. Xingqian circulation, the galactic circle. 10 years passed in a snap. Sword unparalleled, Xuanda star field is ahead. Wang Jiujian looked up and looked forward and said, "I saw a vast star field formed by countless nebulae and mini-planets and stars. And in front of everyone, I could see. Well, let's go, they should be here." Wu Jianwushuang nodded. Immediately, the two walked down from the cosmic boat, put away the cosmic boat, and walked towards the ferry in Xianyang star field. Xianyang Ferry is also a gathering place of many cosmic channels in the universe, extending in all directions, connecting the universe's major star domains and top forces. The two just arrived at Xianyang Ferry, and saw Lan Su and others waiting on that knee. "Huh? Supreme Master? Jiuzai Supreme? Life Shrine sent 2 people this time?" Sensing the approach of Jian Wushuang's breath, Lan Su slowly opened her eyes to look, and her eyes flashed slightly surprised. Wu Jian Wushuang and King Jiujia are now the most precious cards in the Palace of Life. He thought that this time, the Palace of Life would not send 2 of them. King of Warriors / King of the 9th Calamity met Lord Lan Su. Qi Jian Wushuang and Jiujia Wang arched their hands towards Lan Su, then looked around, looking at the several figures standing next to Lan Su, a sneer gradually drawn from the corners of his mouth. "I didn't expect that I could meet many acquaintances here." Chapter 44-43. At this moment, the young man standing next to Lan Su with twin horns in his head, wearing a gold robe, and a sullen face, was not Long Qing or Hu. Sword unparalleled. At the same time, Wu Longqing also noticed Jian Wushuang, and suddenly Li Guang's sword in his eyes murderous. Next to him, there are two dragons, 4 generations of dragons. However, the strength of these two people is much worse than Long Qing. He is the sword unparalleled. It's him. A rudimentary elementary supreme. Let's us dragons so prosperous? How many shots have you made? The two dragons glanced at each other, their eyes flashing with suspicion. It's been a long time, but I miss you so much. Qi Jian Wushuang narrowed his eyes to Long Qing, and sneered at the corner of his mouth. Compared with Bingyu Supreme, his hatred for Long Qing is far more. At that time, he was chased by Long Qing crazy, and almost fell into his hands. He stomped that foot and foot, constantly trampled his body to destruction. Of course, if it weren't for this person, he would not have met the Patriarch's ancestors, and obtained the Chaos Patriarch. Okay. Sword unparalleled. I thought I wanted to kill you. At least after 10 million years. I didn't expect you to participate in this expedition outside the territory. Wu Longqing looked at Jian Wushuang, his eyes flashed cold, and a cruel smile appeared on his face. Sword unparalleled. Wait until the extraterritorial battlefield, we have fun. After finishing speaking, Long Qing turned his eyes and looked at the King of 9 Calamities, next to Jian Wushuang again, and said with a cold voice, "There is also the King of 9 Calamities. When you were at the end of the universe race, you asked me what was right. Right. Hehe, these account books are always remembered. Wait until the extraterritorial battlefield. You see how this book accompany you two to play." Wang Zhijiawang looked indifferent, did not raise his eyelids when he heard the words, and calmly replied, "Is it worthy of you? You." Suddenly, Long Qing's heart was furious. Her forehead was violently jumping. Jian Wushuang couldn't help but look funny. The King of 9 Calamities seemed indifferent and whispered, but once he uttered his voice, he could hit the pain point directly. Lan Su frowned and said, You are all the elites of our universe, in the middle of our suppression of the riots. How can the external enemies not be annihilated before they are annihilated?" After a pause, Lan Su said in a deep voice, "Dear everyone, now the enemy, I hope you all put down your old prejudices and kill the outside world. Otherwise, if I find out, you have affected the battle because of personal conflicts, just blame me for reporting to heaven and telling Master Zeus." As soon as this remark came to an end, although everyone didn't speak again, their faces were still chaotic. Wu Lansu is not a senior supreme practitioner, but if it wasn't for the Lord God standing behind him, he would have been slapped with a slap. When Lan Su saw this, she had to smile bitterly in her heart. She shook her head helplessly and said, "Okay, wait a minute, and then we have to set off. You are the first group to go to the extraterritorial battlefield. I have to come back and adjust the second group." Everyone nodded and stopped speaking. Then one after another, people came from all over the universe. Wu Jian Wushuang has encountered many acquaintances, such as the Jiuxing son of Jiuxing Holy Land, and the Emo Luo Yan Gu of the Emo Luo family, and a supreme of Diwu Temple. In the last 2 wars, the Temple of Life suffered heavy losses, and the Diwu Temple was not much better. Almost the Supreme Realm was dead. It is very rare to be able to send a High Supreme at this moment. The Supreme of the Diwu Temple was still high-spirited. When he saw Jian Wushuang, he immediately lowered his head like a mouse when he saw a cat, for fear that Jian Wushuang would bother him. Today's sword Wushuang's sword is invincible in 2 major steps, and has long been famous, not comparable to the past. After 3 months, Tong Lanza looked at the crowd, nodded and said, "Well, the first batch of candidates have arrived, and we can start." I saw at the moment Xianyang Ferry, scattered 11 Supreme. The 11 Supremes are extremely powerful. In addition to Jian Wushuang being the elementary Supreme, and Jiu Jiawang being regarded as the medium Supreme, the rest are the lowest, and are the high Supreme. Next moment, I saw Lan Su flip her right hand, and a small white flag with 4 handles appeared. "Go with," he whispered, and suddenly 4 small white flags shot into the sky, and then formed an enchantment. Ding! In the void, the rays of light suddenly flew, and beams of light were drawn side by side to form a matrix. Rumble! Immediately afterwards, the boundless void was torn, and a vortex was formed violently. In the center of the vortex, a golden beam of light fell, forming an aperture at the ferry. Let's go! Su Lanci turned back and said something to Jian Wushuang and others, then stepped forward and shot into the vortex of the sky first. Wu Jianwushuang and others nodded their heads, all of which were working divine power, turned into a streamer, and shot into the vortex. Alas! Moments later, the vortexes closed and the sky cleared again. The figures of Wu Jinshuang and others have disappeared. When time passed, Baiku passed the gap. In a flash, 100 years passed. In this century, Lan Su led Jian Wushuang and others, riding the cosmic passage all the way, traveling through the stars, and rushing towards the extraterritorial battlefield. They are extremely fast, often just flashing and disappearing into the cosmic channel. When they appear again, they are already out of several star fields. Gradually they completely moved away from the center of the universe and reached extremely remote parts of the universe. On a desolate planet, 11 supreme figures, such as Lan Su, Jian Wushuang, Zhou Jiwang and Long Qing, jumped out of the void. Here it is. Everyone walked out of the cosmic passage and looked around. I saw that this star was incapable of growing. The divine power was extremely thin, and there were void storms everywhere. In front of this star, there is a wind howling zone, a black wind like a sword, roaring around and shattering the void. In the midst of the faintness, you can still see in this stern wind zone. There is a powerful and fierce starry giant lurking, and his eyes are constantly emitting red light. Lan Su glanced up at the front and said, through this area of the 9 secluded winds, is the place where our universe is stationed in the extraterrestrial battlefield. There is no cosmic passage here, and we must rely on our own strength to cross. The words fell, everyone nodded. The breath of these starry beasts is not the ultimate dominating strength. Even if they are the most powerful, they are barely forced to reach the supremacy, and the presence of the highest supremacy naturally will not be seen by everyone. Among the crowd, Long Qing, who walked at the end, first glanced at the windward area in front of him, and then looked at the back of Jian Wushuang and King Jiujia again, and licked his lips. 9 heavenly emperors, Chapter 44-44. Let's go. Tong Lanza glanced back at them, and immediately stepped on, turning into a streamer, first shot towards the windy area. Yin Jian Wushuang and others followed closely, like a sharp knife, stabbed directly into the Fengfeng area. Alas! In the howling zone, black howling winds tore the void, and terrible sound explosions continued to sound around. This black howling wind is enough to tear the monks below the Supreme directly into pieces. Even if they cross the Supreme, they feel a slight pain. Fortunately, they are the mainstays in the universe, and they are the big names who dominate the party. Although these black squall winds can cause trouble to them, they are just that. Wu Jian's warrior urged the chaos domination body, and the lines of God's veins flickered suddenly, and the whole body was exposed to intense golden light. The wind that was originally like a knife cutting meat suddenly became soft like a spring breeze. Roar! Roar! He stared at a giant starry sky, hiding in the howling wind, roaring and roaring. These starry beasts are all composed of meteorites. Except for the instinct to kill, there is almost no fear. Wujian Wushuang didn't need to draw a sword at all. He just punched out with a punch, which was to pull the force of 1,000 mountains and directly collapse an inch of starry beast. Others also used their own means of casting, and the magical powers flew and bombarded for a while, crushing a starry beast instantly. Gradually, Jian Wushuang and others gradually deepen into the deep wind belt. Lan Su walked in front, and Shen Sheng said, "Be careful. Not far away is the most dangerous place in the howling belt, with the existence of the beast master of the starry sky. If it is just one head, it is nothing, but if it causes a beast tide, it will pose a threat to us." Therefore, everyone whispered a little. No noise disturbed the existence of the beast master level. Everyone nodded when they heard the words, and understood the heart. Alas! The people were not slow, and soon they reached the depths of the wind belt. I saw a starry beast that was several times larger than it was just now, and was asleep in the wind. There was a strong breath that was taken from them. Even if everyone was supreme, it also felt a slight dignified meaning. Tong Lanza walked in front of her, and turned her back to a gesture of hush, motioning everyone not to make a sound. Suddenly, when Jian Wushuang passed by a giant monster king, Suddenly, a black light wave was shot by Long Qing, who walked at the end, and smashed into the starry monster king next to Jian Wushuang. Boom! Suddenly, the body of this star beast king burst violently, and countless black beast blood fell on Jian Wushuang's body. Howling, howling, dash. Howling, howling, dash. In an instant, the entire howling belt fell into a riot. Countless heads of giant beasts awakened, opened their eyes, and stared at Xiang Wushuang. They noticed it on Jian Wushuang, and killed the same kind of breath. In a moment, countless heads of the beast king of the sky flew fiercely towards the sword unparalleled. Long Qing. Lin Lance's face suddenly gloomed, and he looked back at Long Qing and said, "Long Qing, what do you mean? I said it again and again. Don't disturb this starry beast. Have you put my words in your ears?" Others also frowned. This seat is not intentional careless. Qi Longqing spread his hand, and said with fearlessness, "If the of the universe is here, he will not dare to presumptuously. This Blue Su is only an apprentice of the universe, and his strength is not as good as him. Although he is unwilling to offend, he cannot talk about how much fear." Wu Tai Luo's Excalibur came out of the sheath instantly. The sharp sword pressure spread. The sword had no double-sided expression, but the heart was sneer. He had long guessed that this guy Long Qing would overshadow him here. Cut! A giant roar rushed towards the sword Wushuang. A sharp sword blade has been severely cut off. This sword slashed the entire wind howling belt directly, and the sky was torn directly to both sides. Roar! I saw this starry monster king, who was already comparable to the supreme strength, was cut into two directly from beginning to end, and countless blood fell. However, this sword of Jian Wushuang not only did not let those starry beasts retreat, but rushed towards the sword Wushuang even more crazy. In just a few breaths, Jian Wushuang was drowned in the huge beast tide. King Jujia, Jiuxing Shengzi and others frowned and were about to help, and saw that Lan Su's face was not very good looking and said, Don't shoot. Let Jian Wushuang solve it by himself. Otherwise it will only inspire a greater beast tide. We all have to be pulled in. The words fell, and he gave Long Qing a cold look, and there was a disgust in his eyes. Roar roar. I saw the sword Wushuang submerged in the tide of beasts. The Tai Luo divine sword continued to be chopped, and each sword was taken away to take away a starry giant. Sure enough, killing can help increase the power of the Taro Excalibur. In the center of the beast tide, Jian Wu's eyes flickered, and a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Since he got the Taro sword sheath, he found that with each killing, the power of the Taro Excalibur will be stronger, and the vertical eyes of the sword handle will become more demon. Especially the stronger the enemy's strength is, the greater the improvement of the Taro Excalibur. For example, after beheading Yuding Supreme, he felt the power of the Taro Excalibur, at least by 10%. Don't look like it is only 10%, but for today's Jian Wushuang, the power of 10% is already a huge improvement. The most important thing is that with the existence of the Taro sword sheath, he does not have to worry about the impurities that the Taro Excalibur will absorb too much. Novel affects the quality, because you only need to put them in the scabbard for 1 or 2 to warm up. These impurities will be cleared up. When I saw this starry beast, Jian Wushuang naturally saw the hunting delight, and I was still thinking about how to trigger the beast tide, and justly slaughtered to enhance the power of the Taro sword. I never imagined that Long Qing would be better, and sent the beast tide directly to his hands. However, the starry beast king in this area is limited after all. After a few hours of fragrant incense, the starry beast king was slaughtered, and the ordinary starry beast did not have much effect on Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang closed the sword and returned to the sheath. His expression came out step by step from the center of the beast tide. Wu Longqing looked at Jian Wushuang's unscathed appearance, and could not help but feel boring. He shook his head and said, "What kind of star monster is really wasteful and useless?" 5,000 years ago, for some reason, the void crack suddenly became large, and a large number of virtual monks poured out of it. Moreover, these virtual monks did not fight as they did before, but they held groups together. If they are wrong, they can move forward and backward freely, and they should be led by one force of the virtual universe. The god of phenology opened his voice in a deep voice, and there was a dip in his eyes. As soon as this remark was made, everyone's face changed slightly. If according to the of the universe, the virtual cosmos in attack at this moment is only from a sectarian force, then it is not difficult to calculate that the strength of the opposite universe is far beyond their imagination. After all, now they have gathered the top combat power in the universe and gathered here to resist the attack. In other words, that is, the universe itself can only compete with the sectarian power of the virtual universe? Zhou God glanced at the changing faces of everyone and continued to say, "This is not much, mainly because the crack has become bigger and bigger. I'm afraid it won't take long for this crack to open completely and form a channel. By that time, I am afraid that the opposite virtual universe will bring the whole army under pressure. And if we stay dead, the entire universe will fall into catastrophe again." Hissing, everyone took a cold breath. Among them, one of the Supremes asked, "Master God, can't you even wipe out these false men?" The god of Zhou looked at him and said in a deep voice, 3,000 years ago, a huge dark arm bound by a chain was stretched out in the void crack. The old man made a move with this dark arm. Although he forced it back, however, it can be sensed that the master of this black arm is afraid of not being weaker than the old husband, and even being able to be in the middle of the middle with the old husband. As soon as this discourse came out, it was definitely not worse for everyone. Even the sword is unparalleled, and his face is dignified to the extreme. God looked at everyone with a nervous look, and couldn't help but smile and said, "Of course, the words of the husband above, there is no room for salvation. Now everyone just needs to resist the offensive of the virtual universe, and the husband will look for 7 handles." One of the ancestral soldiers of Jintian Shinshi. Once the old man finds Jintian Shinshi, it is very likely to completely seal the void crack. Okay, Now you know the situation in the extraterrestrial battlefields. Remember, the old man just said the word must not be rumored. Otherwise the universe will be shaken and people's hearts will be upset. It crashed. After the god of Wuxia spoke, he looked at Lan Su and asked, Lan Su, now you break them up and put them into the 9 teams, under the control of the 9 teams. Yes, the disciples obey. Shi Lansa nodded quickly, and led the 11 supremes, including Jian Wushuang, to join the 9 teams in the camp. Chapter 44-46. The 7th team's camp is in a lush bamboo forest. Ran Lansa did not send Jian Wushuang in personally, but informed Jian Wushuang that the master of the god had transmitted the sound to the 7th team, and let Jian Wushuang directly go in to report. Before he left, Lan Su also kindly reminded Jian Wushuang to say that the 7th team leader Heiyuan Supreme had a bad temper. But his nature was not bad. If there was a discord, let Jian Wushuang be more tolerant. Heiyuan Supreme? Yen Jian Wushuang was in a black robe, holding the slanted Tai Luo Excalibur sword handle at his waist, walking into the bamboo forest step by step. Heiyuan is supreme, he is no stranger. There are not many invincible supremes in the universe. Almost everyone is famous and glorious. Heiyuan is supreme. Among the invincible supreme realms, its reputation is at the forefront. If Ruo Tailuo is said to be the first sword of all ages, then Heiyuan Supreme is the first sword of all ages. Heiyuan Supreme took the sword into the path, and 8,000 chaos prehistoric eras claimed the invincible supreme realm. However, he has always been alone, so he has not left any Taoist forces in the universe. The universe does not know much about him. A piece of bamboo leaves fell swiftly, and the more you walked in, the more open the path in the forest. It didn't take long for a bamboo house to appear in front of the sword without double sides. The door of the bamboo house opened, and more than a dozen supremes sat cross-legged at the door. They were wearing uniform white robes. After seeing Jian Wushuang, their eyes were full of novelty, and they kept looking up and down. The name of Jian Wushuang, although they have been staying in extraterritorial battlefields, I have heard of it occasionally. What seems to be the first genius in the universe today, and has the power to leapfrog. In this regard they are doubtful. Jian Wushuang also looked at them. There were a total of 20 supreme masters, all of whom were above the supreme master, and one of them was a supreme master and a half-step invincible master. The 2 men's robes are also different from other supremes. Although they are also white robes, they are sewn with gold threads at the corners of the robes. These 2 people should be the vice-captains of the 7th team. Wu Jian's pupils shrunk slightly. Both of them have the spirit of killing. Just a glance, there was a terrifying intention. Wu Jianshou continued to raise his head and looked toward the deepest part of the bamboo forest. There was only one person standing. The man is extremely tall and burly, carrying a long black knife on his shoulders, and wearing a large white scorpion. The large satin embroidered on the back of the shovel is the large 7 team's word, and his back is facing the sword. Sunda just stood there, just like Taishan Hengyue stood in front of him, a huge coercion spread. Next moment, the person slowly turned around. A face with long scars, a square face not angry, appeared in Jianwu's eyes. For this person, he is the captain of the 7th team, Invincible Supreme Heiyuan. Heiyuan Supreme, with the sword to enter the path. The universe has been famous for 9 days and 10 invincible supreme. He is full of monstrous spirits. Jian Wushuang just touched his eyes in the air and felt a terrible horror, enough to cause the suffocating cold intention. At first glance, I know that this person is definitely a super strong man who walked out of the blood of the dead. Sword unparalleled? Heiyuan Supreme raised his eyelids and looked at Jian Wushuang with an expressionless expression. Heiyuan Supreme. Qi Jian Wushuang's expression was indifferent, and he saluted slightly. Heiyuan Supreme nodded his head and said, Jian Wushuang, this seat has heard of you. You seem to be the first genius in the universe right now. No matter how amazing your talent is, this ugly word is in front. This seat needs as a reminder. When you enter this extraterrestrial battlefield in your majesty, you should not bring your arrogant arrogance as the first talented genius. Here, you only need to know 4 words and obey. Alive. Do you understand? Jian Jianwushang heard his eyes narrowed and saw Haiyuan's expression indifferent, so he nodded and said, Relax, I understand. Well, this is also for your good. Haiyuan Supreme paid attention to Jian Wushang's look. Seeing that Jian Wushang was not like those other geniuses, when he heard that his face was full of disapproval, he couldn't help his face slightly nodding. Well, Rong Rong, you take the sword unparalleled to change into the uniform of our 7th team. Yes, Captain. One of the 2 deputy captains, among them the top Supreme Xiao Wei, and a short hair of the honorary Supreme congratulations, and then looked at Xiang Jianwushang smiled. Warriors Supreme, please hear. Trouble. Wu Jianso nodded at him. A moment later, under the leadership of Rongjing Supreme, Jian Wushang quickly changed the clothes of the 7th team. Like everyone else, he was dressed in a plain white robe, chest position, and embroidered the word 7 teams with black lines. Wu Shuang Supreme, the captain's words just now, don't take it to heart. The captain, he is a straightforward character, not intentional against you. Every one of us who has just entered the 7th team, the captain will click it, because you are afraid that we are too aggressive and not stable enough to lose our lives on the battlefield. Rongji Supreme smiled. Wu Jian Wushang nodded his head, signaled to understand. The 2 of them chatted while walking. Basically Rongjing Supreme introduced them, while Jian Wushang listened silently, nodded from time to time, and made clear. After some conversation, Jian Wushang's impression of this honorable Supreme was quite good, and did not feel that his position and cultivation were higher than Jian Wushang. He was aggressive but rather mild. Well, Jian Shuang, in front of you is your harem. If there is no war, the team has no restraint on individuals. You can cultivate with peace of mind, but if a war occurs, you will receive a message from Captain Haiyuan. Regardless of what's on hand, be sure to come and gather as soon as possible. Otherwise Captain Haiyuan's thunder is not easy to extinguish. After Rongji Supreme said, he gave Jian Wushang a token and strode away. Wu Jianshou narrowed his eyes, and immediately opened the gate of his own palace, and went in one step. This dwelling house covers an extremely large area. A futon is placed in the center, and a matrix method is drawn next to the futon, which can make the monk sitting on the futon quickly recover the divine power. Creak. Wu Jianwu closed the door, sat cross-legged, his eyes flashed with thought. Whenever you come, you can rest assured. The crisis in this extraterrestrial battlefield is perilous. Even the invincible Supreme is in danger of falling. The danger is far from comparable to the universe. I am still too weak now. You must first think of ways to improve your strength. Qi Jian Wushang silently whispered to himself, immediately closed his eyes, began to condense his strength, and hit the medium to supreme state. At the same time, King Nine Dragons, Long Qing and others settled down. Among them, Long Qing stepped up into the sky and directly joined the 3rd team to make up for the fallen vice-captain position of the 3rd team and become the 3rd team vice-captain. Time flashed, Ijia time passed. Chapter 44-47, at the same time. Millions of miles away from the universe camp. It was like a vertical eye, and the cracks about 10 feet in length were constantly twisted, and a breath completely different from this universe was taken from the inside. The starry sky before this crack has turned into a Shura hell. Ha 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 ha, a bunch of weak and poor garbage. A monster with a huge body, an upper body, no head and neck, and a human face on his stomach laughed wildly. I bang bang bang. There was a scarlet shock wave like bombs bombarded wildly. On the left shoulder of this headless monster, there are 5 traces of long marks like claws, especially evil. 5 marks voids. The 8th team responsible for guarding the cracks in the void heard a terrifying hiss. 5 marked voids, corresponding to the invincible supreme level strong in this universe. The leader of the 8th team, 0 with Supreme, holds a sharp gun in his hand that can tear the sky, and his expression is dignified to the extreme. Kill this seat. The next moment, 0 with Supreme opened his mouth coldly, and when he stepped on it, he suddenly turned into a streamer and killed the headless monster. Yes. Behind him, more than a dozen supreme powerful men forcibly suppressed the fear in their hearts. and each performed their magical powers and rose into the sky. Babu General, eat this bunch of garbage. The headless monster saw the face growing on the chest. Sparks of excitement flashed in his eyes, stepped under the heavy footsteps, stretched out his big hand and grabbed at the Zerowood Supreme. Behind him, 8 shadows stepped out of the darkness. Hiss, it's delicious. A monster with 3 snake heads and a lower body is a human monster. Oh, the taste of meat is really fascinating. A monster with a very fat body, like a ball. A monster with its mouth and jaw cracking all the way to the back of the ear laughs vaguely. Kill them. A strange man who looks like a horned warrior, but has thick and sharp fangs, growls with excitement, and the fighting in his eyes is crazy. The 8 people are extremely weird. On their left shoulders, several long marks are shining. Among them, the man with the least long marks, a man with a pale face and black eyeshadows under his eyes, also has 2 long marks. That is to say, these 8 generals, the least powerful, are also medium to supreme. Hey! The next moment, the 8 flashed their bodies, disappeared behind the headless monster, and looted towards the 8th team. What? For a moment countless screams sounded. A medium supreme, just rubbed by the palm of the headless monster, instantly burst into blood mist, extinct. This starry sky was directly stained with blood. Damn! Zerowood Supreme looked gloomy, and the dragon spear in his hand strangled all directions. Sunhan's gunman was enough to explode dozens of stars together. Boom! This shot exploded, and the vast sky was instantly torn open to a huge mouth, and a sound explosion sound burst instantly, as if being stabbed by Zerowood Supreme instead of a gun, but a 9-clawed dragon of arrogant world. Under this gun, the whole world must bow to his head. Ha ha ha, good job. I ate you. The headless monster laughed even louder. There was a dark wave of destruction, condensing in front of his chest. Void explode. Universe base camp. Jack. On weekdays, almost all the gods of the universe are beautiful and cheerful. But this time they have changed to the gentleness of the past, and the coldness in their eyes is extremely cold. Wuzhou stood up, raised his head to look at the endless void. Countless avenues evolved in his eyes, and the darts flowed, forming yin and yang. His eyes directly passed through the endless void, and saw the tragic battlefield outside the cracks of void. Sunhan's voice came from his mouth. Dead. He stomped his right foot, and turned it into a shard of darkness that ran across the sun and the moon and went straight. With this knife, Daomong surpassed 100,000 miles, and traversed Xinghe to sweep the sun and the moon. Ding! For a moment, this knife was severely split on the right leg of the headless monster that was about to step down. A half-month arc of dagger flashed, and with a tear, the entire right leg of this headless monster was cut off instantly. Roar! Suddenly, the headless monster roared in pain, and stepped back a few steps. Xingmu, you can't do this? Heiyuan Supreme reached out and raised Zerowood Supreme, who had reorganized his body. Heiyuan, this guy is hard to deal with. Zerowood Supreme gasped slightly. His expression solemnly said. Another one. The face on the headless monster's chest, his eyes twinkling, constantly looking at Heiyuan Supreme. Alas! I saw countless tentacles pouring out of the wound of his severed right leg, and then a flash of light flashed. These tentacles condensed into a huge right leg. Injury, instant recovery as before. Let's go. The headless monster grunted coldly, and turned to re-enter the void crack. Behind him, Babu will sneer and shake his head. Want to leave after killing someone? A cold voice sounded in the void. Soon afterwards, he saw a thin young man wearing a white robe, walking out of the void and step by step, cutting off the path of the headless monster. On the back of the white robe, the huge dazzling 6th team is embroidered with black thread. The 6th team captain, Brook Supreme, came. Behind him, more than 10 players walked out side by side. Jiuxing Shengzi joined the 6th team. He nodded toward the sword Wushuang, shouted the leader of the line. Qi Jian Wushuang slightly jaw-head. Knowing that things are urgent at this moment, not a moment of chatting chills, he ordered a voice to let him live well. Oh! The face of the headless monster's chest twisted, and he glanced back at Xuanqi Supreme, then turned his head to look at Heiyuan Supreme. Instead of being afraid, he opened a radiant arc of excitement and whispered in a low voice. Interesting, really interesting. Next moment, he lifted his head sharply. Zhang angrily laughed. Babu generals, eat them. Boom. Countless energies condensed in the palms of his palms, and he saw that there was a huge mouth in his palms. Open this mouth, and the crimson light wave cannonballs condensed out instantly, blasting towards Heiyuan Supreme. Heiyuan Supreme slashed the huge knife in his hand and blasted a shell that smashed over, whispering coldly. 7th team kill. Yes. All members of the 7th team are roaring and using various magical powers to kill those 8. Hiss. Among the 8 generals, the monster who had 3 snake heads, but had a human body suddenly spit out the letter strangely and smiled. There is food coming to the door again. He narrowed his eyes. His face was full of greed. His turquoise pupils twisted. His eyes continued to glance across the faces. Finally, his eyes fell on Jian Wushuang. Chapter 44-49. The first is more. It was just a lapse of time. The 3 snake-headed monsters had already appeared in front of Jian Wu's double-sided, opened enough to swallow the mouth of Sun Moon Snake, and bite hard at Jian Wushuang. There are countless stench winds blowing at you. 4 marks. Top extreme. Wu Jian's expression was dignified, and Tai Luo's Excalibur appeared in his hands. The strength of these fictitious men is far beyond the corresponding realm. Don't look at these 3 snake-headed monsters are just top-level supreme, but they are far more terrible than ordinary top-level supreme. Even if it is Jian Wushuang, I dare not take it lightly. Cut. Just when Jian Wushuang lifted the Tai Luo Excalibur and was ready to fight with the 3 snakehead monsters, Rongzuan Supreme had already taken a step ahead, swiping his right foot fiercely, and will be facing the 3 snakeheads bitten by Jian Wushuang. Fly together. Sword unparalleled. You are weak, not his opponent. Give him to me. Sun Rongji glanced at Jian Wushuang, and then stared at the snake-headed weird with countless dignity. It is good. Wu Jianwushuang nodded his head, without evading politeness. At this moment, it is extremely critical, not the time for him to fail. Are you in a hurry to come to death? The 3 snake-head monsters' mouth opened a playful smile. Looking at Rongzhen Supreme, the cruel light in his eyes continued to spit. Tong Rongzhen is obviously higher than him, but he is not half afraid, but instead has the light of greed in his eyes. Whiteness, that kid is over to you. The 3-headed snake said to the young man with a pale face and black eye shadows under his eyes. This person is the weakest one among the 8 books, and the one with the most human-like appearance. It is good. Baidu heard his words and tilted his head, and the whole person revealed his numbness and stiffness. Alas! Countless black light waves condensed in his hands and turned into a thin sword. Next moment, 2 imaginary forces exploded at the foot of Baidu, and he rushed out instantly, like a white lightning, fiercely chopped to the sword unparalleled. Can you still use it like this? Wu Jian Wushuang narrowed his eyes, and the Tai Luo Excalibur was cut off instantly. Wu Tai Luo's Excalibur collided with the sword made by Su Li, and suddenly the sword with Su Li shattered. Nianjian Wushuang's neck twisted, and his right fist was slammed out, just like pushing a round of the sun. Numerous bright golden lights condensed on Jian Wushuang's right fist and banged heavily on Baidu's cheek. Boom! Instantly, the whiteness was hit by a smashing hammer, and the body flew upside down. The whole head was directly blasted by this fist. Sure, but that's it. The sword has no double-sided and expressionless. This whiteness is 2 marks, which corresponds to the medium supreme strength, even if his strength is far superior to the medium supreme. To improve a grade, but only the high supreme. High supreme has long been no longer in the eyes of Jian Wushuang. Is it? Countless thick tentacles poured from Baidu's neck, and in a short time, he recovered as before. Oh, the speed of recovery is much faster than us. A slight surprise flashed in Wu Jianhui's eyes, and then an interested look appeared on his face. Come on, let me see how powerful are your vagrants. Do not let me down. The sword Wushuang rose to the sky. A majestic sword pressure, centered on the sword, spread instantly. The battle between the two parties and horses has fallen into the most intense state from the beginning. Heiyuan Supreme and 11 Supreme shot at the same time, strangling headless monsters back and forth. The two invincible extremes join forces. It's not as simple as 1 plus 1. Either of them has the terrifying power to level the universe and destroy one side. At the moment, when the two of them join forces, the entire starry sky is exploded, as if to reshape the universe and open up a chaotic world. I can't use any words to describe the power of both shots. In their hands, the sun and the moon are just of mud, and that are free to play between their fingers, and the Milky Way across the sky, but the stream flowing under their feet. They can raise their hands and throw their feet at will, and can directly overturn the entire universe and blast its supernatural power. A little bit of mighty power is enough to squash countless stars. Although this headless monster is strong, it can even be said that he has repressive strength in the face of any of these two people. But in the joint effort of the two, he was suddenly beaten back and can only keep roaring. On the battlefield, horrible magical powers exploded, and sword blades tore through the sky. If someone in the depths of the universe saw this scene at this time, they would be exclaimed that this is a battle for extinction. With the joining of the 6th and 7th teams, the 8 generals that had been devastated and destroyed were immediately contained, and the situation reversed. Among them, in addition to the headless monster, the one with the highest build is the monster with a fat body and a mouth split to the ears. The teeth in his mouth were uneven and long, but he opened his mouth and bit a bite. But he directly crushed a supreme soldier who pierced him. Ha 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 ha, explode! A horrifying purple light wave spewed out of his mouth like a thunderbolt, and the 5 supremes who besieged him were all driven away. These 8 books are really too powerful. Although each of them is faced with enemies that are several times their own, and is suppressed by death, they have not really fallen to the stage of life and death crisis, and they can even counterattack. I can say that if any of these 8 books are placed in the depths of the universe, they will be the masters of the hegemony. Cut star. A blue sword mang, nearly 10,000 square meters thick, condense in the sword without hands. The sword has no double sides and no expression, and it is easy to split. The entire sky was ripped apart by the mighty boom. Instantly the dummy named Baidu was severely split again. How can it be so strong? Tong Baidu's eyes shrank. This was the first time he had met. The opposite universe had a state under him, but he could crush him. His numb and stiff face was now full of fear. Boom! He picked up again, and countless virtual forces in his hand turned into a long sword. Under the flash of his body, he appeared on the top of Jian Wushuang's head and severely chopped off. Click. However, this sword was directly held by Wushuang's 5 fingers. Numerous violent virtual forces exploded between the 5 fingers of the sword pair, but they were unable to shake the sword pair. I heard that you have a companion supernatural power called Virtual Explosion. If you do use it again, you have no chance. Wu Jianshou shook his head and shook his finger, and the endless majestic strength immediately condensed at his fingertips, and instantly flew this whiteness. He looked down at the man condescendingly, his eyes indifferent. Okay, well, I'll do as you wish. Baidu struggled to stand up from the ground, holding his hands in a fierce space in front of him, and yelled in a low voice. Virtual explosion! He turned his head and stared at Xiang Wushuang, as if he had found something that shocked him. His eyes enlarged sharply and he lost his voice. Your body, how could there be a breath of his life? Huh, the breath of his? He Jinshuang heard the words, and couldn't help a frown, and the Tai Luo Excalibur, which had been split off, was taken back by him. He stepped in front of Baidu, looked down at him coldly and asked, Who is the he you said? You don't know him? Baidu heard a word, seems to be accidental sword Wushuang. I do not know who he said this person, then laughed ha. Ha 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 ha. There is his breath in your body. Humble and poor guy, you are dead. They will come to you. What are you talking about? Wu Jinshuang frowned. He could feel that the person in front of him did not open the river in the mouth. This person must know something. You want to know? At this moment, Baidu no longer had the fear of death, but there was a strangeness in his eyes. Humble and poor guy, you have a relationship with he and you will die. No matter where you flee, those lunatics will find you, and you will surely die. Ha! The voice dropped, Baidu's body exploded. At this moment, he even chose to blow himself up. The horrible might exploded, setting off a monstrous white wave. The sword Wuxia receding back, waved his hands again and waved the shock wave formed by the whiteness self-explosion. What the is this guy talking about? Wu Jian Wuxia stood with his sword. His face was cloudy for a while. Shi Baidu's words before his death were like curses, echoing in his mind. Who is he? Who are those lunatics who are going to kill me? The meaning of Ji Jianhui's eyes blinking quickly. He was not a stupid person, and soon realized that Baidu would suddenly say so, after he released his talents and shocked his life. And Jian Wuxia was very keenly aware of it. The first sentence this person said revealed the word breath of life. A breath of life? Jian Wuxia murmured to himself. It can be said that his special life was all created by his master Xian, by his own power so. This person just said he's master? Then the lunatic in his mouth, was he the one who hunted down Master in Jiuyi Starfield? In the faint ambiguity, Jian Wuxia seems to feel that in the endless darkness, there is an invisible line, which is controlling everything. The master of this line is his master Xuani. He can now be 100% certain that his mysterious master is absolutely inextricably related to the virtual universe. Even Jian Wuxia felt more and more that every step that his master took was meant. He began to wonder if it was his first meeting with Xuani, which seemed to be an unintentional coincidence. But in fact it was already a planned plan. In addition, Jian Wuxia has another problem that he is most concerned about. Chapter 4451. Third More. On the battlefield, the 8 generals headed by a headless monster, under the pressure of the 6th and 7th teams, can only retreat steadily. The headless monster tried to escape several times, but was stopped by Supreme Heiyuan and Supreme Shi, one after another tearing the heavens and the earth through the sky, crossing the sun and the moon, suppressing all directions. Under the cooperation of Heiyuan Supreme and Cici Supreme, the headless monster was gradually forced to the corner and had no choice. The waist of Baidu was actually killed. The headless monster noticed the scene where Jian Wuxia beheaded Baidu, and a loud humming sound came out of his nose. Then he looked at the 3-headed snake and said in a low voice, "Willow, before we retreat, you kill the guy with the sword." He was facing 3 snakes of the top siege of the 2 vice team level top sieges. He nodded and heard the words. The 3 snake heads opened their mouths at the same time. Immediately, he swept away and rushed to sword unparalleled. You can even kill Baidu. It seems that I look down on you." The turquoise pupil in the eyes of the 3-headed snake twisted, and a strange laugh was made in his mouth. Wu Jianwuxuang looked up at the man, his face slumped. On this person's left shoulder, 4 long scars are like scars of Threeb, reflecting the scarlet light. The strength of this 3-headed snake is far more powerful than that of whiteness. He was even stared at by the 3-headed snake, and he had a sense of horror that he had become a prey. The cold hair of the sword unparalleled body was all upright. "Eat you." Ha! The 3-headed snake turned his head and disappeared instantly. When it appeared again, he had already appeared above Jian Wuxia. The huge snake's mouth opened, and he bit it down. "It's fast." Wu Jian's face changed slightly, and Tai Luo's Excalibur split instantly. A sword like a horror, making a terrifying howling sound, instantly split into the giant mouth bit by the 3-headed snake. Ha! It was like a bomb exploded in the mouth of a 3-headed snake. However, the 3-headed snake was chopped by the swordman, but there was no pain at all. Instead, he bit a bite and swallowed the swordman directly in the belly. "No wonder you can cut and kill Baidu. Your sword is powerful, and has reached the level of 3 marks." The 3-headed snake whispered a low laugh, and then Feng Feng said, "If I'm not mistaken, you must be a Tianjiao character in this universe?" Jian Wuxia heard nothing and said nothing, but the body full of supreme divine power, ready to go. "Oh, you're so boring." When the 3-headed snake saw Jian Wuxia ignored him, he couldn't help but churn his lips, and immediately the dark green pupils contracted into a line instantly. An endless virtual force burst out from him. Well, let me eat you. Boom! The virtual force on the three-headed snake exploded again. Under the sweep of its body, it opened a mouth that was enough to swallow the sun, the moon, and the stars, and bite away fiercely towards Jian Wushuang. Taro Sword Code Second Style Dawn. Jian Wushuang's voice chilled and turned directly into a golden light, quickly splitting towards the three-headed snake. With this sword, Feng Rui reached the extreme point, enough to cut off the galaxy and split Zhoushan. Boom! The two severely hit each other, and the power of the Tai Luo divine sword exploded directly. Instantly, the snake head in the middle of the three-headed snake, from the mouth of the snake to the end of the snake, was flashed by a golden thread and cut in half. This time, the three-headed snake couldn't hold it anymore, and gave a painful growl. The figure of the unparalleled sword is condensed behind the three-headed snake. This sword splits the three-headed snake into two halves, but he is not proud of it, but his face is more dignified. Taro Sword Code Third Style Dusk. Boom! Instantly, Duan Jianzhao was urged by Jian Wushuang. With Jian Wushuang as the center, a huge pit appeared at the foot of Jian Wushuang, and then spread and spread. There was a huge suction coming out from the center of the pit, and it was only a moment that he pulled the three-headed snake into it. Buried, the 5 fingers spread out by Wu Jian's unparalleled grip. Suddenly, a force of squeezing from the sky suddenly burst out from the pit. The force of squeezing and colliding was so magnificent that it was enough to crush a top-level supreme into a meat sauce instantly. At this moment, the three-headed snake that was still roaring suddenly had a look of fear on his face. Stuck in this pit, he was like an earthworm trapped in a huge stone mill. His body was crushed thousands of times in an instant. In the distance, the headless monster, who had been driven to an end, noticed this scene, and his face suddenly became ugly. For the first time, he looked at Jian Wushuang. His eyes surged. Heiyuan Supreme and Cici Supreme also saw the pictures of Jian Wushuang, suppressing the three-headed snake, and there was a flash of color in his eyes. Heiyuan, it seems you have a monster under your hand. Sushi Supreme smiled slightly. Under the cooperation of the two, the headless monster has come out, but now it is only the end of a strong crossbow, so he also rarely relaxes a bit. You CANT talk about evil spirits, but your talent is better than others, and you still need to experience it. Heiyuan Supreme has no emotional changes on his face, but in his heart he is also surprised by Jian Wushuang's combat power. Is it? Su Shishuan looked at Heiyuan Supreme with a smile, and then said, Heiyuan, why not transfer him to my 6th team? Get out of here. Heiyuan glanced at him without hesitation, and then snorted, Don't say this, first kill this headless monster. Lucy Supreme nodded his head, and looked again at the headless monster, with a coldness on his face. A 6-mark monster, even if he guards thousands of chaos ages in this extraterrestrial battlefield, has only seen it a few times. This is a big fish, you must not let it go. Supernatural power sanching in one gas. For a moment, the 3 figures exactly the same as those of the Supreme Master Xuanxi came out of his body. The other side. Virtual explosion. Three-headed snake delirium feeling the force of terror squeezing in the pit at dusk. No longer hesitating, arrogantly used the associated supernatural power, virtual explosion. Suddenly, the skulls on the left and right sides of the three-headed snake delirium exploded directly. After the 2 snake heads exploded, they turned into pure virtual energy and rushed towards the middle skull. Roar! The three-headed snake delirium opened his mouth, and a thick wave of light from the bucket was instantly roared by him. This horrible wave of light is so powerful that it only pierced the pit of dusk at once, and pulled out a long dark trace in the void. This horrible wave of light, after piercing the pit of the dusk, blasted towards Jian Wushuang again. Come! Wu Jianshou took a deep breath, and clenched the tailored Excalibur in his hand. The war in his eyes turned into a spark, flashing to the extreme. Break me! Wu Jianshou roared, and his power was tens of thousands of times more powerful than the ordinary supreme power, all in his hands. Choose! Suddenly, Taro's sword turned into a world that cut the sky, cut the sun, the moon, the stars, and the terrible sword rainbow that runs through the sky and the sky. Beneath the sword, the tailored sword trembled wildly, making a sound like the Buddha groaned, and the demon wept. Boom! Suddenly, the sword was chopped on the false burst of delusive light. Chapter 4452. Fourth More. Boom! Instantaneously, two huge shock waves spread rapidly in the center of the two men's fighting. The whole void bursts instantly. Even the other Supremes who met in the distance were smashed by those who were hit by this shock wave, and they retreated back. For a moment, Tai Luo's magic sword turned into a dragon sword rainbow. Stalemate with this strange light wave, regardless of up and down. Roar! Delirious Willow opened his mouth and yelled again, and saw the strange light wave in his mouth. And it turned out that the power had skyrocketed again, from the thick of the bucket to the thickness that required two people to embrace. Instantly, Jian Wushuang was severely rushed to fly, and the white robe representing the seventh team burst directly. She sure is really strong. Wu Jian Wushuang stepped back all the way, stepped on the void with his legs, and crossed two long marks. He couldn't help breathing a little. This delusion is a four-marked false soldier, which means that it corresponds to the top supreme in the universe, but it can be said to be powerful. And it is even more terrifying than the half-step invincible supreme, Yuding, who has passed the enemy. The pit was broken inch by inch at dusk, and Willow stepped out step by step. His eyes flashed to the extreme. Best and weakest trash bug. You have angered me completely. You it. Delirious Willow finished speaking, and suddenly there was a surge of madness on his face, and he wanted to violently slash Swordsman. However, just then, in the distance, there was a roaring roar of a headless monster. I saw Heiyuan Supreme standing on the sky, and an invincible supreme power broke out, and said coldly, "Supernatural power, Black Prison Half-Moon Cut." Boom! In a split second, the huge black knife in his hand rose in the wind, and in a short period of time, it skyrocketed to a full length, turned into a thunder-black dragon with open teeth and claws, opened his teeth, and split directly on the left shoulder of the headless monster. Tear it! This headless monster was torn open with a single knife, dropping countless blood. And Supreme followed closely behind. The movement is not slow at all, also use the killer. Supernatural powers 5 spirits. Boom! Instantaneous visions. Countless meteors condensed out of thin air, and then fell like rain. The two killed together. After a round of blows, the headless monster suddenly exploded, and turned into countless pieces of minced meat. I have to say that the virtual monks from this virtual universe are powerful. If they are ordinary monks, even if they are invincible supremes, they will face 2 rounds of devastating blows from Supreme Heiyuan and Supreme Streams. I saw that the tentacles were breeding wildly on the numerous pieces of minced meat floating in the void. After a short breath, these tentacles came together, and turned into a headless monster. Puffing his breath was weakened a lot, and the face on the chest was staring at Heiyuan Supreme and Zioxy Supreme. Haha. Hee. He gave a low, weird grin in his mouth and immediately said, "You can't kill me." Is it? Heiyuan Supreme and Zhishi Supreme are expressionless, walking towards the headless monster step by step. There was a mocking smile on the corner of the mouthless monster. Immediately, an extremely powerful coercion emanated from the headless monster. This coercion does not belong to him. At the moment when this coercion is released, the looks of Heiyuan Supreme and Cece Supreme are all changed. This coercive force is far above them. This coercion, they are very familiar. At the same time, when the headless monster closed his eyes, his face became devout and whispered, "Great God, I am your people God." The magical groaning whispered from his mouth. The 3-headed snake Delirium, that was originally crumbling and killed towards Jian Wushuang, after giving up on Jian Wushuang unwillingly, gave up the pursuit of Jian Wushuang, stopped his pace, and began to silently groan like a headless giant recite, "Great God, am your people Willow." At the same time, Yabu will be among the others, the spherical monster with a mouth cracked to the jaw, and a horned warrior with thick fangs. 28 generals began to recite this magic spell. Suddenly, a terrifying breath came from them. In this breath, whether it is invincible supremacy, such as Heiyuan and Xuanxi, or sword unparalleled, it is like falling in an ice cellar. A big terror between life and death is enough to suffocate. Ha! Ha! There was a dull sound from the crack in the void. Howling. Immediately after that, a squeak of iron chains across the floor sounded. What happened? Sui Jian Wushuang suddenly felt an extremely strong palpitation, coming from the Buddhist instinct, and wanted him to flee this place immediately. As if an indescribable terror exists, it is coming to the world soon. Ha! The muffled sound grew louder and louder, as if Lei Gong was angry, and slammed the smashing hammer in his hand. Boom! Suddenly, the void crack exploded. I was bound by countless chains, and the extremely dark arm was so large that it burst out from the void crack. Can't use any voice to describe this dark arm, which is so big that it completely subverts the sword's unparalleled imagination. Light as a fingernail, which is dozens of times of the sun. With the palm of your hand, you can cover several star fields. There was a vast evil, ancient atmosphere, and it erupted, turning into a cloud of smoke. Guang is an arm that is so huge, it is hard to imagine how big the master of this arm will be. This is... Suddenly, Heiyuan Supreme and Xuanxi Supreme were horrified, and a horror surged in their eyes. Qi Jian Wushuang almost fell directly from the air, and the whole person was like a falling ice cellar with cold liver and gallbladder. This is definitely one of the most terrifying beings he has ever encountered. This is the arm that had dealt with Master Zeus. In the distance, the 8th captain, Zerowood Supreme, who was recovering quickly, was directly interrupted, shocked and lost his voice. Boom! The next moment, the arm was raised high, and it was photographed fiercely towards Jian Wushuang and others. Escape! He did not hesitate at all, whether it was Heiyuan Supreme or others, or Jian Wushuang. All the divine power in the body erupted in an instant, turned into countless rays of light, and blasted away in all directions. However, some people's response was slow. Ha! 2 high-ranking Supreme, only then erected light and grabbed. That palm has been photographed fiercely. Millions of empties, shattered at the same time. Hundreds of thousands of mushroom clouds rose from his fingers. Do not. Chapter 4453. Fifth more, at the same time. Located in the base camp and main hall of the extraterritorial battlefield, Wu Zhou Shengao sat on the main seat, closed his eyes and meditated. Tong Lansu and Lan Lan disciples stood beside him, silent. Suddenly, the statue of Zhou felt something, and opened his eyes suddenly. Su Shen was born. He raised his head, staring at the cracks in the void. His eyes stared directly through the starry sky, and he saw the huge black arm. Hearing this, Lan Su and Lan Lan, 2 disciples standing on his sides, suddenly felt a horror on his face. Xian Su Shen. But those who have dealt with Master. Xiao Su Xiaolan, keep your base camp. Wu Zishan's face was heavy, only to see his shoulder tremble slightly, then he disappeared into the main hall. After the god of the gods left, Lan Su and Lan Lan couldn't help looking at each other, and their hearts began to sink. Extraterrestrial battlefield. Rumble. The entire starry sky has been blown up. Headless monsters and His Majesty's 8 part will stand in place, watching this scene steadily, with sparks of excitement in their eyes. The second palm photograph by that black arm is already coming. Instantaneously, the tidal wave is surging and countless chi machines are shaking. The world seems to be in the end, and it will be destroyed once. I was swiftly firing the sword Wushuang who fled. I only felt that the eyes were black, and when I looked up, I saw that the wide palm had covered the sky and replaced the vast sky. Do not. Instantly, Jian Wushuang was about to crack, an unprecedented crisis of life and death, constantly exploding in his body, like an alarm bell. Let him leave quickly. Ha! Taro sword appeared in the sword without hands in an instant. At this moment, Jian Wushuang has no reservations anymore, and all the divine power on his body bursts out. Ha! Instantly, the sword Wushuang directly split into thousands of swords in white, resisting this palm. However, it is useless, everything is useless. This way of destruction is enough to cut off the mighty swordsmanship of the universe. And falling on this palm is like being bitten by a mosquito, which can't hinder the slightest. Fortunately, Jian Wushuang did not intend to stop the sword, but took advantage of the impact of this sword to split, and quickly retreated, leaving the attack area of this palm. Tarot Sword Code 5th Style Tarot. Under the pressure of this crisis of life and death, Jian Wushuang has been completely insane, and utterly used the best of the best in the bottom of the box. Boom! Suddenly, behind the sword Wushuang, there appeared to be the supreme faith of Tai Luo Supreme. This law is as big as a star, but in front of the arm, it is as small as a finger, extremely small. Cut! Qi Jian Wushuang exhausted his whole body energy. Suddenly, he was holding the Tai Luo divine sword, and he slashed down with the sword. His back was also in the same shape, making the same action as the sword unparalleled. The majestic sword surged up into the sky. This defeated half-step invincible supreme ice sword's Tai Luo sword was just a blink of an eye, and it was severely chopped on the palm of an inch of pressure. Buzz! Wu Tailuo's sword exploded directly on the dark palm, forming a star-shaped mushroom cloud. However, this palm still stood still and fell quickly. Qi Jian's unparalleled vision turned into a darkness, and the whole world was filled with this palm. Fortunately, the air waves that Taro's sword exploded directly formed a terrifying shock wave and spreading Jian Wushuang, which was already extremely fast, to the front again. Boom! Finally, this palm fell down. At this critical moment, Jian Wushuang arrogantly used all the mysteries that can be improved in a short time, bringing the speed to an extreme and rising to a level again. It was embarrassing. At the moment when the palm fell, Jian Wushuang burst into a roar, and a roll rolled away from the palm. The fingertips of the arm fell from the place where the sword was unparalleled, but at a distance of 100 feet. The Jiu Xing Xing Zi is also included in this palm, and there are no more than one position behind the sword. He is out of luck. The desperate roar came to an abrupt halt, and he was photographed as a fan. Allied. At the last moment of his death, his eyes turned to Jian Wushuang. His eyes were full of fear and thirst, as if he wanted Jian Wushuang to save him. 9 stars. Jian's sword Wushuang was smashing instantly. Jiu Xing Xing Zi is the core member of the Sword Alliance, and one of the highest followers in the ancient sky. However, he hasn't waited for Jian Wushuang to take any action. With the torrential weather falling from that palm, a shock wave has formed, sending him to fly fiercely. Suddenly, Jian Wushuang was like a broken sack. He crossed a long parabola in the air, and fell into the distance. Qi Jian Wushuang struggled to stand up from the ground, and the blood couldn't be restrained, and he spit out of his mouth. Qi Jian Wushuang looked at the drop of that palm, his face gloomy to the extreme. Rub. Suddenly, that palm has been raised again. Under the palm of his hand, nearly 10 supreme people have turned into dust and fell completely. This palm, like a devil, slowly lifted up, and the dark and strong magic air between the 5 fingers entangled. The third palm is coming. Hold this palm, and completely cover everyone. Wu Heiyuan Supreme and others looked at this palm, and could not help but feel scalp tingling. More people feel ashamed and give up resistance completely. Wu Jianshuang's face was somber that he could drip water, and that Tai Luo sword had completely drained all the divine power from him. Now let alone escape from the attack range of this palm. Even if it is now possible to give another sword, it is not easy. In the distance, headless monsters and 8 generals, looking at this scene, a grim and cruel smile suddenly appeared on his face. Great Lord, end this life of garbage. Boom! The path was bound by a black iron chain, and the skin was dark and dry, like a corpse's huge arm, raised again, and took a third palm. Everyone gave up. In addition to Sword Wushuang. No. I won't die here. Never. Yan Jian Wushuang's teeth clattered. There was a sense of insanity in his eyes. He saw his right hand flip, and Wu Xing Chao Ding Ding appeared in his hand. Hit him. It's time to detonate Wu Ding Chao Ding. He wants to directly control Wu Xing's Chaos Ding to explode to stop this hand. All this is too crazy, too shocking. No one can imagine what effect the self-detonation of an extreme ancestor will have. Hiss, Wu Jianshou took a deep breath and looked at the trembling Wu Ding Chao Ding in his hands. His eyes flashed intolerable first. Chapter 4454. The first is more. Huh. After this sound blew, all the people raised their heads instantly and heard the sound. I saw one approaching to the extreme, using the white horses captured by both eyes to pass in front of them in an instant. Everyone just felt that a flower was in front of them, and this practice appeared above their heads. That is an old man with white hair. Behind him, blossoming lotus blossoms. Master Elder God, Master Zeus is here. We are saved. For a moment, there was a rush of ecstasy on everyone's face. That was the ecstasy of the rest of the life after the disaster. Wu Jian's pupil shrank, and he would prepare for the self-destructive Wu Ding Chao Ding, and withdrew it from the ring. Buzz buzz! After I saw the god of Era, there was a burst of violent sounds in the void crack. Su Shun, you are over the line. Wu Zhou god was expressionless, stretched out his fingers, and pointed toward the palm that destroyed the heavens and the earth. This finger is very common. Even if Jian Wushuang's luck was concentrated in his eyes, he didn't see anything special about this finger. However, it is this finger that gently touches the palm of the black palm, but it is the giant palm that is crushed all the way, and it can no longer be in the slightest. A cold voice sounded from the mouth of Zhou God. Next moment, boom! Instantly, countless bright brilliance burst out, and the avenue directly evolved into substance, turning into a rolling fairy wheel. At this fingertip position, there are 6 reincarnations rising. Fairy birds flying, cranes hovering, true dragon and phoenix arrogant. Suddenly, endless Xianhui fell, countless stars flew around. The avenue sometimes turned into a huge yin and yang gossip, and sometimes turned into a flowing billowing huangquan, as if the heavens and earth were condensed in this finger. Roar! A loud, snarling roar spread through the cracks in the void from the other side. Immediately afterwards, I saw that this palm was like an electric shock, and began to retract at a very fast speed. Instantly, the 8 generals headed by a headless monster were directly exploded into countless pieces of flesh by the aftershock force of this finger. Holding the huge arm, he grabbed it fiercely, and grabbed the 8 pieces of minced meat in his hand, and crazily retracted into the void crack. Alas! After a few breaths, the pile of minced meat condensed together, and turned into a headless monster and 8 generals. Damn! We will be back! Hiss, that guy with the sword. This time you are lucky. Next time you will not be so lucky. The headless monster and the 8 generals were exhausted to the extreme. But even so, their faces were not half afraid, but they looked provocatively at the of the earth. The 3 snakes' delirious willows looked cruelly toward Xiang Wushuang, pulling a sneer from the corner of his mouth. Howl! He was just dying, and the black arm, wrapped in a headless monster and 8 generals, retracted into the void crack. Everyone looked at each other, and in their hearts, they had the good fortune of the rest of their lives. But more, it was still a strong humiliation. Wanna come? Just leave? I have always had a mild expression of the universe. This time there is no trace of expression on his face, cold like a piece of ice. I saw his body flicker, and the whole person disappeared again, but he just stepped into the void crack. Master Elder God. Instantly countless people's hearts tightened. No one expected that the of the universe would rush into the void crack. Don't worry, since the Lord God of God dared to face the universe, he will certainly come back. Haiyuan's supreme glanced at the crowd, and he said with a deep voice. Sushi Supreme also took a deep breath and said slowly, the owner of that arm just now is the strongest of the virtual universe. Since he dared to cross the line to slaughter us, the Lord God can naturally kill them in the past. Everyone be calm and calm, just wait quietly. Everyone heard the words, looked at each other, and nodded and stopped talking. To tell the truth, the battle with the 8 generals was almost overwhelming. However, the emergence of that huge arm was an instant reversal of the situation and massacre. It was like a fight between 2 children, but the adults suddenly stepped in. In the hearts of all the people, All those who surged were trembling, a layer of haze. Fortunately, the of the universe came. Howling. Howling. Ha! Inside the fissure of the void, there was a loud explosion. After dying for about half a column of incense, the of the universe rushed out of it. He held in his hands, carrying the headless monster and 8 generals. His face is slightly pale. The compatibility between the two universes is too large. The higher the revision, the stronger this compatibility, and the more he will be rejected by different universes. Even if he isn't able to stay in the virtual universe for too long, he can only withdraw. Master Elder God is back. Master God, are you okay? Everyone started talking and hurried forward. Old man is fine. The god of Shakespeare shook his head, and immediately looked at the headless monster and Hatchie Man, who were sealed by mystics. In the hands of the gods, the headless monsters and 8 generals, which were extremely difficult to deal with before, are just as weak as a baby. Close. As soon as the Phoenix god's eyes were cold, he directly displayed the great magical power, and squeezed these 8 parts and headless monsters into a bead-sized bead. You want to leave if you kill someone? Will my husband allow it? Wu Zhoushan shook his head, looked at Supreme Heiyuan and others and said, the 6th team stays behind the void in the void, and the others go back with the old man. Everyone looked at the 8 generals, and the headless monsters that were captured by the gods of Zhou. They felt that they were exhaling a sigh of anger, and they came to the extreme. Yes, so everyone should be rushing. Under the leadership of the universe, everyone turned into a streamer, looting towards the base camp. Qi Jian Wushuang didn't have any expression on his face, but he felt like he was holding a heavy stone, which was extremely heavy. The brutality of the battlefield outside the territory was far beyond his imagination. You have to know that in the depths of the universe, Supreme can be a repressive party, commanding the utmost power of several stars, and there is almost nothing that can threaten Supreme life. But in this extraterrestrial battlefield, the Supreme is almost like a mustard, and will fall down if he is not careful. Chapter 4455. Second More. Alas! I walked around Changhong, sweeping through the vast sky. Along the way, everyone didn't speak and remained silent. This victory was won, but the victory was too tragic and too tragic. Ji Jian has no expression on both sides, and is also silent, and the desperate look of Jiuxing Xingzi before his death is constantly replayed in his mind. He and Jiuxing Xingzi are not particularly familiar with each other, but it was only that time that the 6 major forces besieged the Temple of Life. Jiuxing Xingzi brought the disciples of Jiuxing Holy Land to support him, and he could remember it forever. Virtual God. Wu Jian murmured to himself, and then there was a flash of murder in his eyes. After a while, the base camp stationed outside the battlefield outside the territory arrived. In addition to the 6th team, who is now left to patrol the void fissures, the captain-level figures of the 8 teams are all members of His Majesty, standing at the gate of the base camp to welcome everyone. Obviously, they already knew the battle that broke out in the extraterritorial battlefield. This is also the first time that Jian Wushuang saw members of the 9 team. Everyone walked into the base camp step by step and nodded slightly to the 8 team members, saying hello. Wu Jianwusu walked at the end. Just as he was about to step into the base camp, his steps were Emil. It's him. Wu Jianshou frowned and looked towards the 2nd team. The captain of the 2nd team is the Taishu Emperor, who once had a relationship with him in the Taishu Temple. Unexpectedly, he turned out to be the captain of the 2nd team in this extraterrestrial battlefield. Oh, this guy is here too. Emperor Taishu also saw Jian Wushuang and raised his brow slightly. Every once in a while, the god of chaos will send a group of supreme masters to the extraterritorial battlefield in the universe. If he hadn't seen Jian Wushuang today, he really didn't know that Jian Wushuang came to the extraterritorial battlefield. Beside Emperor Taishu, Emperor Bingyan had already recovered from his injuries and put on a white robe of the rank of vice captain. He also saw the sword unparalleled and he was shocked. Jian Wushuang. This is Jian Wushuang. Immediately, he lowered his head and opened a hysterical smile on the corner of his mouth. Very good. Jian Wushuang, I didn't expect you to come to the extraterritorial battlefield. Ha 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 ha. It is time for us to settle accounts. His chest was violently undulating, his mouth was laughing, but there was no sound. The sword of Wu Jian glanced over Bingyu Supreme's face, and the corner of his mouth also pulled a sneer. I am very good. My enemies are in this extraterrestrial battlefield. The hatred between them has already reached the point of endlessness. Unless there is a fall between them, the hatred will continue. Snapped. Wu Jianwu stepped up and continued to move forward. Sword unparalleled. You are so fateful, the gods have survived. A harsh sound rang out in Jian Wushuang's ears alone. Jian Wushuang turned his head and saw Long Qing, wearing the white robe of the third team vice captain, spreading his hands and said with a joke. After waiting for Sword Wushuang to reply, Long Qing shook her head and smiled. But that's fine. It seems that God's will is ready to let you die in my hands. Is it? Wu Jianwushuang glanced at him, then ignored him, and walked forward step by step. For a long time, these enemies will naturally be solved one by one. I walked into the main hall. The phantom god has been sitting high on the main seat, holding in his hands a headless monster and 8 beads that will be condensed. His gaze swept across the faces of everyone. Then he swung his right hand. A touch of warm brilliance immediately waved out from the god of Zhou and spilled on everyone. Suddenly, there were many injured people on the original. The injuries recovered quickly, and the exhausted divine power accelerated the recovery speed. Ill-wait Shizhou god. Suddenly, everyone arched their hands. It doesn't matter. Wu Zhoushan nodded and said, this time you worked hard. Immediately, the right hand of God of the Emperor waved again, and the beads in his hand rose to the sky, freeing him from the palm of his hand. Howl. The next moment, the headless monsters and 8 generals rose in the wind and stood in the hall. Damn old thing. Kill. Suddenly, the headless monster and Babu screamed fiercely on their faces, and they shouted and killed. But now, what kind of waves do they find when the of the universe is here? Alas, I saw the expression of Zhou God indifferent, a bounce of his fingers, and suddenly Dao Xianhui shot from his hand, turning into a cage, trapping the headless monster and babe. In the cage, the headless monster slammed a few times, and found that it was impossible to shake the cage at all. Then he turned his head to look at the Zhou, put out his tongue, and licked his lips, smiling. God of God, you just keep us till now, just want to know the news of Lord Shushan? Wu Zhou God heard nothing and said nothing. The headless monster shook his head and said, what about what I tell you? It won't be long before Master Shushan will unlock the seal and lead the army to level the universe. By then, not only will you die, everyone in the entire hall can't escape. The billions of souls in your entire universe will become our slaves. Ha 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 ha. With that said, the headless monster laughed loudly, and his face was full of madness. Look for death. Wu Zhou's face turned fierce, and he popped up with one finger, and the headless monster suddenly melted away from the body. In just a few breaths it disappeared. Next, the of the universe shook his fingers, and Babu began to die one by one. In front of the universe, there is no difference whether it is the headless monster or the 8 generals. Just like Jian Wushuang and others faced the dark arm, there is no resistance at all force. Ha! There was a muffled sound, and soon, the 8 books were exhausted, leaving only the gloomy 3-headed snake Delirium. Just as the of the universe was about to kill him, the 3-headed snake Delirious Lu suddenly said, I can tell you about the false god, and even tell our universe to deploy to you, but I have a condition. The god of Wu Zhou frowned and said lightly, what conditions? When he heard this, a cruel smile appeared on the corner of the mouth of the 3-headed snake Delirium, and the turquoise pupil turned. The next moment his eyes fell on Jian Wushuang. I will fight this man, regardless of life or death. Each depends on his fate. As soon as he said this, the audience was shocked. Alas, everyone's eyes are on Xiang Jianwushuang. Chapter 4456. Third more. This battle, I answer it. When the sword Wuxia stepped out, the audience was silent after saying this sentence. Everyone is. Master, absolutely must. Jian Wuxia is my universe's arrogance. If anything goes wrong, it will be a great loss to my universe. Heiyuan Supreme also flashed his eyes and said, this is not possible. Jian Wuxia is not the elementary supreme practice, and the three-headed snake has 4 mark-level virtual men. According to the realm swap, this is the top supreme, plus a false explosion is enough to compare to the invincible supreme. Everyone persuaded. At this moment, a seemingly strange sound sounded in the hall. What's so bad? Once we know the deployment of the void universe, we can deal with it in advance, and even wait for the rabbits to wipe them out. This matter is very important. What's the matter for Jian Wuxia to go to the war? In my opinion, don't just say let Jian Wuxia fight a battle. Even if Jian Wuxia took the initiative to die, it would be due to the universe. It's his duty. The speaker is not someone else. It is the Diwu Temple Supreme, who joined the 6th team. Alas! Suddenly many eyes fell on him. The deputy captain of the 7th team, Rongjing, sneered. You are so nice, why don't you go to death? Also, what is your duty? As far as I know, Jian Wuxia has come to this point. It's all on his own. And who hasn't owed half of it? How can he say it? Suddenly, the supreme Nana from the Diwu temple opened his mouth, and thought for a long time before sulking. This 3-headed snake Willow is not me by name. When everyone heard the words, they couldn't help laughing, and when they wanted to say more, they saw the Zhou shook his head and said, okay, be quiet. Then everyone shut up. Wu Zhoushan looked at Xiang Jianwuxuang, and Shunxing asked, little guy, if you are against him, how sure are you to win? Wu Jianshuang heard the words and smiled, then stretched out his hand, grabbed into the void determinedly. 10%. It is good. After hearing the words, the god of gods suddenly flashed in his eyes and nodded. The sword is unparalleled, and the old man will let you fight on behalf of our universe. Others still wanted to talk, but when they saw that the of the universe had already made a decision, Jian Wuxia also looked like a vow, so he nodded and stopped saying more. It was the delusion who heard the words, and the corners of his mouth widened suddenly, pulling out a cold smile. Oh, I seem to be underestimated. Alas! The bifurcated pointed tongue licked the corner of his mouth, and the pupils of the willow dark green burst up, showing a trace of cruelty. Well, my husband will arrange a battlefield for you. The god of the phantoms tears at will, and immediately tears a crack in the void, turning it into a kingdom of gods. There are everything in the sky, the mountains, the lakes and the rivers. This ability to break new ground and create the world is truly amazing. Immediately, Zhou God took a photo with his right hand, grabbed Willow from the air, and threw it into the battlefield of the kingdom of God. Thank God. Wu Jianwuxuang arched his hand at him, and then stepped into a streamer, and also shot into the battlefield of the kingdom of God. On the great hall, the silhouettes of Jian Wuxuang and Delirium disappeared. Instead, a landscape picture appeared. In the picture were the 2 swordsmen and Delirious in the battlefield of the kingdom of God. Look at it. Since Jian Wuxuang said that he was 10% sure, he wouldn't be wrong. The of the universe faintly spoke. Everyone responded in congratulations, raised their heads, and looked diligently at this picture. God Kingdom Battlefield. Wu Jianwuxuang and Lulu stood on a large lake and stood with their hands. The 2 did not have more nonsense, and they started the fight directly. Ha! With his right foot stepped, Jianwu overturned all the lakes, forming a giant wave surging, and the wave reached 100 feet high. Suddenly in the tide, Jian Wuxuang has already held the Taro Excalibur in his hand, turning it into a forest blue sword, and rushing out. Howl! The waves of Baizhang broke open instantly, and the figure of Jian Wuxuang appeared above the head of Willow. Cut! The cold voice exploded. Qi Jian Wuxuang directly spurred the divine power, and fell down severely. Hiss! Delirious Willow spit out snakes, and the green pupils reflected the appearance of Jian Wuxuang, a sword flying, and opened a red light wave. Ha! Instantly, This red light wave hit the tailored Excalibur that fell down and chopped off, and immediately sent out an extremely powerful shock wave. Ha! Instantaneously, the shock wave spread out and razed the square to the ground. The tens of millions of tons of water in the flooded lake are directly dried and evaporated, turning into water vapor, forming a monstrous white wave. Fortunately, this side of the kingdom of God was developed by the of the universe, and the space is extremely stable. Otherwise, if it is placed outside, it will be enough to smash the void and burst several planets. Boom! Both were retreats, and Willow was smashed into the ground hundreds of pieces, and a huge human-shaped pit appeared, while Jian Wushuang flew backwards, crashing into 3 mountain peaks in succession. Kanken stopped. This move was just a small tentative test of the two, so the two did not suffer any injuries. Breaking dawn. Yan Jianwushu leaned against the mountain wall, stepped on his right foot again, and his body radiated again, turning into a golden light, and killing towards Willow. Virtual crack. Delirious Willow's 3 snake heads were glued together, raised his hands, and slammed his sword towards Wushuang. Suddenly, 2 halos appeared in his hands, which actually caught the breaking dawn golden light. Ding 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 ding. Huge impulse, pushing Willow back hard and violently back. His feet marked 2 deep grooves on the ground in his hands, countless sparks splashed. Go to hell. Delirious Lu Yen laughed. The 3 snakes' heads opened, and they bit the sword's head. Yes, it is you. Yan Jianwu's eyes were cold, and he directly urged Chaos Overlord, sweeping his right foot fiercely, sweeping like a 9-section whip, and hit the snake head under the biting Willow. The snake head of Delirious Willow suddenly swayed, and Jian Wushuang took the opportunity to yank out the Tai Luo Excalibur, and one sword flew Delirious Willow coldly. The 4th season of the Terra Sword Classics. Howl! Suddenly, the entire battlefield of the Kingdom of God was twisted, and the Taro sword disappeared. Chapter 4457. It is good. In the main hall of the base camp of the universe, everyone looked at the battle scenes coming from the screen, and clapped their hands. No wonder there was news from the universe before, saying that Jian Wushuang is the first day of eternal arrogance, and has the ability to fight beyond the ranks. This seat will still be doubtful before. Now it seems that the rumors are half exaggerated. Oh, remember that this trick was created by Taro's guy that year? Seeing Jian Wushuang, he has already done Taro's Supreme True Story. He will probably be better than Blue out of Blue, surpass Taro Supreme, and take it away. The name of the first sword emperor of all ages. Since Supreme, I haven't seen such a profound person in Kendo in the universe for a long time. I really miss it. After this sun, the future is limitless. In my opinion, I'm afraid it won't take long. The Taro Excalibur will be renamed and replaced by the Wushuang Excalibur. Everyone said with a smile. They were quite worried at the beginning, but at the moment when they saw Jian Wushuang, who could perfectly suppress the Willow, they felt relieved. Only He Yuan is supreme, frowning slightly. I don't know why, there is always a bad feeling in his heart. God Kingdom Battlefield. Wu Jian's unparalleled footwork is empty, his black hair is flying, and he looks down at the icy willow frozen in ice and snow, and speaks coldly. Burning. Suddenly, the body of the 3-headed snake Delirium directly exploded, and shattered into numerous ice foam. The Jian Wushuang saw a slight sigh of relief, and he could feel that the jinchi mixed in the snow had completely crushed the willow into dregs. Hiss! However, just then, howl! Numerous tentacles poured out, tangled fiercely, and turned into the appearance of a 3-headed snake. His breath is not diminished, looking up at Jian Wushuang's eyes full of irony. Okay. Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows. And even if he was, he had to say that the recovery ability of this virtual man was simply terror, and he could not help moving. Su took a deep breath, and Jian Wushuang sneered. I see you can survive a few blows. 4 seasons, winter to spring. Boom. Suddenly, the snow and snow disappeared, and all the spring thunder blew. The drizzle drizzled, rolling down like playing a robbery fairy song. Millions of raindrops are millions of swords. Slaughter. Fall. Jian Wushuang said coldly. In an instant, Millions of sword chi turned into raindrops, rolling down at the same time. Every sword chi is the full blow of Jian Wushuang. Zheng Jin's move killed the Yuding Supreme, and the thousands of avatars of the Supreme. Rumble. Suddenly the three-headed snake Willow just had to fire a few virtual bullets, and his body was again destroyed by millions of swords, and his body was broken. In the main hall, everyone looked at this scene again and again applauded. However, this time it was not only Heiyuan Supreme's brow that frowned, but even the of heaven flashed a light in his eyes. God Kingdom Battlefield. No, there is a problem. Wu Jinsho stopped moving, his brows tightened tightly together. If something goes wrong, there must be a demon. He played against the three-headed snake Willow in the extraterritorial battlefield. He knows the strength of Willow, and he is definitely not so weak. Until now, Willow had not performed the magical power burst at the bottom of the box. This guy must be thinking about it. Qi Jian has no two-way talents, but just in an instant, he wants to understand everything. Why would Lulu find him solo? And why he hasn't performed his tricks? This only proves one problem. That's the delusion that Lulu is carrying. Well, let me see. What are you doing? Wu Jinsho snorted coldly. A flash of color flashed in his eyes. 4 seasons, spring to summer. Rumble. Suddenly, the raindrops disappeared in the sky, a scorching sun, rising suddenly, hanging high for 9 days. Xia of the 4 seasons swordsmanship is the most violent and most terrifying move in the 4 seasons. Qi Jian Wushuang did not believe it, and Lulu dared to cope with ease as before. Go with. The next moment, Jian Wushuang waved his right hand heavily, and this round of fiercely hot sun, he immediately crushed towards the willow. Rumble. The entire battlefield of the Kingdom of God shook madly. The earth began to dry and split, and dozens of gully marks appeared in the sky. The sky is falling apart. This time, the willow has finally changed color. The pupil in his eyes contracted violently, and a dip in his face surged and said, "Void explode." Suddenly, the left and right heads of Willow were blown away severely. Thousands of energy were accumulated in his mouth, and a terrifying light wave was born. Roar! The next moment, this light wave radiated out, and collided with the big sun that fell heavily. Let's sizzle. The void is twisted for a while. Even if you see, the extremely stable space of the kingdom battlefield opened by the god of Zhou himself is beginning to be full of dense cracks like spider webs. Countless devastating energies exploded from the impact of the two, slamming the quartet madly, completely leveling the mountains and rivers of this Fangshen's country to the ground, like chaos. In the main hall, many of the Supremes watching this scene were all shocked on their faces. The power of the two men's fight has reached half-step invincible Supreme. No, the average half-step invincible Supreme cannot cause such a powerful power. It can be said that the two are infinitely close to the invincible Supreme. Swords matchless, worthy of the name of the first day of the universe. For many years, ever since the 100,000 Chaodong prehistoric kingdoms died in the hands of Su Shi, I have never seen such a villain. I wait for the universe to be so proud that it is the blessing of our entire universe. Everyone's eyes are astonished. Even the god of Eo, who occupies the main seat, flashes a glory in his eyes. Xuani, you have a good apprentice. There was a slight smile on the corner of his mouth. What? Delirious Willow growled wildly, and the horrible light waves in his mouth continued to grow stout, and the power increased even more. Talents, primitive universe. Dragon blood secrets. Jian Wushuang is also eager to crack. He is urged by various mysteries and turbulent powers, and his firepower is full. Next moment, boom! 2 energies finally exploded, and a huge mushroom cloud rose. The whole world of the kingdom of God, trembling madly, as if to be destroyed the next moment. Suddenly at this moment, the 3-headed snake Lulu suddenly burst out into a crazy laugh. This is the time. Chapter 4458. Fifth is here. Ha! On the little snake turned into delirium willow, a ray of light flashed over the fangs, biting hard at Jian Wushuang's neck. It all came too fast. As soon as Jian Wushuang didn't respond, the willow's fangs had pierced Jian Wushuang's skin and bitten into the neck. A sudden pain came. Jian Wushuang couldn't help screaming, just stretched out his hand, and was about to pull the delusion off his neck, and saw that the delusion directly turned into a glimmer of light and penetrated into Jian Wushuang's body. What? Instantly Jian Wushuang surged like a crackling sound. Ha 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 ha, from now on, sword unparalleled, I am you, you are me. We two share one. Jian Wushuang didn't open his mouth to speak, but in his throat, there was a sinful sound completely different from him. The pupils of the pair of purple-gold eyes of Jian Wushuang are rapidly changing, turning into the vertical pupils of faint green. Get out of my body! Jian Wushuang's expression was bleary and he roared. He felt that in his body, an extremely strange power was taking control of his body. This is not eluding. If it is eluding, no one has robbed him of the perfect chaotic creature, Delirium Willow, to accompany him. Ha ha ha, sword unparalleled. No need to struggle. This is the curse of the snake god, you can't resist it. Come on, don't resist me. With the cooperation of the two of us, you will have both divine power and virtual power. By then, both universes will be at our feet. We will become the true co-owners. What kind of false god? What of the universe? Will only become the lingering ants under our feet. We too will sit high in the clouds, overlooking beings, enjoying the supreme power of life and death in the universe. Jian Wushuang, think about it, how wonderful it is. Deep and wicked, with a smirking voice, again from Jian Wushuang's throat. Wu Jianwu opened his mouth, and his tongue turned into a forked snake letter. In a short time, Jian Wushuang completely turned into a half-human half-monster monster. I'll say it again, get out! Jian Wushuang gasped sharply and yelled. Control of the body is his bottom line. He will never allow anyone to touch his finger. Hissing, sword unparalleled, I said, you can't resist it. Why do you think I chose you among so many people? In Jian Jianchu's throat, he made another sound. This scene is weird to the extreme. He is like two people living in one body, one yin and one evil, talking to each other. The words came down. And it was only at this moment that Jian Wushuang really understood the intention of the willow. From beginning to end, everything is carefully calculated. What I did was this moment. Wu Jian Wushuang was silent. He could feel that the power of the willow was constantly wandering in his body, robbing him of his physical control. Want to take my body? Never. There was a madness in Wu Jian's eyes. Even if it is death, it will never be the same. He will never be able to control the flesh together. Universe Base Camp inside the main hall. Sword warriors. Everyone was taken aback by this mutation. It all came so fast that they didn't respond. Qi Mingming Jian Wushuang also suppressed Absolute Willow with absolute superiority. But in a blink of an eye, the sudden change suddenly occurred, and Willow was fighting for control of Jian Wushuang's body. The dialogue between the two was also transmitted through the screen. It made them jump in their hearts. If Jian Wushuang really agreed to what Lu said, the combination of divine power and virtual power would bring about a real demon evil between heaven and earth. With the talent of sword unparalleled, once he grows up, he will flow between the universe and the virtual universe, and become a peerless demon that no one can subdue. Heiyuan Supreme and others were instantly green. His relationship with Jian Wushuang is not familiar, but in just a few meetings, he already has the feeling of being born to death. Presumptuous. Suddenly, the expression of the Zhou was gloomy. Photo. He saw that he grabbed his right hand, and immediately grabbed the sword Wushuang from the battlefield of the Kingdom of God. Old man, do you want to kill me? Do you have the heart to lose such a genius in your universe? Wu Jinsha was caught, and he was not half afraid, but instead looked at the Shinto god with no fear. This is an idea he has already made up. It's best to be able to win the sword without a match. Even if he can't take away the sword Wushuang, the of the universe wants to burn the jade and stone, he can take away the sword Wushuang. For him, this wave of trading is not a loss. Do you think the husband can do nothing? Wu Zhou god raised his eyelids and said, Old man, you don't need to bluff me, no matter how strong you are. The practice system of our two universes is completely different. Why can't you be mine? Is it? Wu Zhoushu grabbed his right hand, and Jian Wushuang suddenly seemed to be sucked by the vortex, and shot at the palm of Zhou. Divinity seal, huh? In that moment, the old 5 fingers of the god of gods spread out, and patted it on the head of Jian Wushuang. Instantly, countless soft divine power emerged from the palm of the god, turned into a warm current, and rushed into the body of the sword. Suddenly, Jian Wushuang's body trembled wildly. Roar, roar! He squeezed his mouth and made a painful growl. However, the of the universe was expressionless, his big hand pressed firmly on the top of Jian Wushuang's head. Everyone looked at this scene. All of them were upset. After, Jian Wushuang's trembling body gradually calmed down. He closed his eyes tightly and fell into a deep sleep. At his neck, a complicated black rune appeared on his neck. In the middle of the seal he looked like a snake. Send Sword Wushuang to rest. There was a tinge of tiredness in the eyes of Wu Zhoushu, and he opened his mouth and spoke to Lan Su and Lan Lan, who were standing on both sides. Yes. The 2 disciples quickly responded with congratulations, shooting a gentle divine power, rolling up the sword unparalleled, and walking towards the distant palace. I waited until the 2 left with their swords. Wu Heiyuan Supreme and others looked at each other and quickly asked, Master God, what happened to Jian Wushuang? Is there anything wrong? The Zhou looked at them and said, I have performed the magic and suppressed the 3-headed snake delusion inside Jian Wushuang's body. It should not be a problem to think about it. However, because the divine power is not the same as the virtual power for the sake of it, I can't remove it completely. Chapter 4459. 3 seconds passed in a blink of an eye. Jian Wushuang finally woke up. Wu Jianshou got up from the bed and squeezed his swollen brows with his hands. Then his thoughts surged. He remembers that he was fighting for control with Delia in the battlefield of the Kingdom of God. And then his consciousness fell asleep. And now, he felt his body carefully, and the delusional willow lurking in him had disappeared, and he had 100% control over his body. But somehow on the right side of his neck, a dark seal rune appeared. What is this rune? Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes. If he guessed right, the disappearance of Lulu should have something to do with this rune. Creak. As he was thinking, the door of the room was pushed open, and the of the universe stepped in. See, God of the universe. Wu Jianshou quickly arched his hand at him. You're welcome. Wu Zhou God smiled gently and said, Little guy, how do you feel now? Wu Jinshuang replied, No problem. That's good. Zhou God nodded. Then his face became a little serious and said, Jian Wushuang, I just used magical powers to suppress the power of the willow in your body. It's a force, and you do mind it. Relax, naturally you want. There was a moment of thought in Wu Jian's eyes. The 2 chatted a few more words, and after seeing that there was nothing abnormal about Jian Wushuang, Zhou Shen left the room. In the room, only Jian Wushuang was left. He sat cross-legged on the bed, continually meditating on the words of the earth. Delirium willow, although it has been sealed, but he is like a time bomb. Maybe it will explode at any time. It is impossible for him to pin his destiny on others. Slap yourself. You must kill the wicked willow that was deposited on him. Then, the first thing you have to do is to understand the structure of virtual force. Only after you understand the virtual force can you have the opportunity to destroy the force left by it. Void how to understand. After a while, Jian Wushuang thought about nothing and had to stand up and walk towards the outside. Outside the squatter house, a supreme name hurried. Wu Jinshuang just wanted to say hello to them, but could not help but frown. I saw these supreme glances on his face, and his face was all stunned. Then he evaded vaguely and distanced himself from the sword. Immediately, a whispered sound rang out from their mouths. Hello, have you heard of it? Jian Wushuang was taken away by the people of the virtual universe. Yes, it is said that he was still a 4-marked vagrant. Hurry up and stay away from him. Although the master of the god used the great magical power to suppress the Su Shi in his body, it was not completely eliminated. That is, the Su Shi in Jian Wushuang may erupt at any time. Yes, yes, don't be afraid of 10,000, just in case. That's a 4-marked virtuoso, and the captain level can't shoot. Who can subdue him? Hurry up, get away from him, otherwise if he violently kills, wouldn't we be in danger? After a while of discussion, Jian Wushuang couldn't help but frowned and tightened. I seem to be isolated? Sun shook her head, and Jian Wushuang did not take it to heart either. Isolate him just right, and keep quiet. Wu Jianshou stepped forward step by step. Just then, a group of laughter came. When Jian Wushuang was taken away, I saw it with my own eyes. That miserable look is absolutely impossible. I can't describe it. I tell you, it's best to stay away from Jian Wushuang when he sees it. Otherwise, if he violently kills someone, which one is closer to him? Would he just hit his muzzle? Jian Wushuang heard the words, and between the eyebrows, there was a coldness. He lifted his eyes and saw a group of ordinary supremes, who were surrounded by the Black Robe Supreme from Diwu Temple, listening to his story. And before speaking, it is the Black Robe Supreme of this Diwu shrine. It turned out he was fanning the fire behind his back. The cold mang flashed in Wu Jian's eyes and stepped forward. He remembered that in the main hall, it was exactly what this person said. It was his duty to go to fight with Willow. Even if he went to death, it was for the universe, and it should be. Crackling. The footsteps sounded. Sui Na was originally listening to the story of the Black Robe Supreme in Diwu Temple, and everyone with a satisfied face saw Jian Wushuang coming. And suddenly he was stiff, and his face was frozen. Swords are coming. Run. The seal of Jian Wushuang must have been broken. Suddenly, the crowd frightened in excitement, and became a bird and a beast. At the same time, the Black Robe Supreme stunned in his heart, and lowered his head to open. Want to leave? Wu Jianshou sneered, with 5 fingers stretched out grabbing directly. Suddenly, the Black Robe Supreme was like a little chick who was caught, and flew directly into the hands of the camera, sword unparalleled. With 5 fingers, he tightened his throat instantly, and held it up slowly. Sword unparalleled. What do you want to do? This is the base camp, and you plan to kill me? The black robe rose with a flush of redness on his face, forcing him to calm down. Don't you dare me? The cold mang flashed in Wu Jian's eyes, and the 5 fingers suddenly exploded into the sword, pouring into the Black Robe Supreme body. As long as Jian Wushuang urged him a little, these sword chi that poured into the body of the Black Robe Supreme could instantly hang him and destroy him. The Black Robe supremely felt the arrogant sword energy in his body, and suddenly a big terror between life and death came to his heart, and his face couldn't help turning white. Sword unparalleled, I didn't mean it, I apologize to you. His lips trembled, flashing begging eyes. Jian Wushuang is the first day of the universe, and won the protection of the gods of the universe. He is really not sure whether Jian Wushuang killed him, and will not be punished. If after hearing a half sentence you fan the flames, chewing the roots of your tongue, you will understand the consequences. Jian Wushuang snorted, and slowly released his hand. The Black Robe Supreme suddenly fell on the ground. Get out! Ji Jian looked down at him with no expression on both sides and said, Yes. The Black Robe Supreme did not dare to show any dissatisfaction, and hurriedly crawled away. Jian Wushuang saw this, and shook his head. This kind of person just jumped the beam clown. If he wanted to die, he wouldn't be worth the trouble. Subsequently, Jian Wushuang strode away, and headed for the 7th team. In the 7th team, Heiyuan Supreme is practicing cross-legged. Team leader. Wu Jianshou arched his hand at him. Never mind. Heiyuan glanced at Jian Wushuang faintly, and said, Sit down, I have something to tell you. Chapter 4460. The 7th team is located in a bamboo forest. The bamboo shoots are green and green. Heiyuan Supreme sat against the sword unparalleled, and his large white owl was on the ground at will. Sword unparalleled. We know that the deputy captain of our 7th team returned to the Supreme Crane. You should know? Heiyuan Extreme asked faintly. I know. Wu Jianwushuang nodded. The establishment of a squad, including a captain, 2 vice-captains and 10 players. The captain of the 7th team is Heiyuan Supreme, One of the two vice-captains is the Honorable Supreme, who has been with him, and the other is the Gueha Supreme. In the previous battle in the extraterrestrial battlefield, the arm of the virtual came, and countless Supremes died in the hands of the virtual god. Ji Rongjing had good luck and escaped this calamity, but it was not so lucky to return to Huzuan Supreme, and in the second palm, he died in the hands of the false god. I just had an emergency at the beginning, and had no time to worry too much. Now that things have come to an end, naturally I have to replace the deputy captain, and replace it with a new one. Sun Heiyuan Extreme glanced at Jian Wushuang. He is not the mother-in-law's character. When he even said, Jian Wushuang, I mean, it's up to you to serve as the deputy captain of our 7th team. What do you think? After hearing the words, Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows and said, Isn't the position of captain and vice-captain always required to be half-step invincible supreme, or top-ranking supreme? Heiyuan Supreme heard a smile and said, Sword unparalleled. Depending on your strength, which top supreme, or even half-step invincible supreme, can keep you steady? Although you can't fix it, you're in war. Power is no different from the vice-captain level. This? Wu Jianwushuang thought for a while and said, Captain, we came to this extraterrestrial battlefield shortly. I'm afraid I can't convince the public? For the position of deputy captain, Jian Wushuang does not exclude it. But it is optional. But if it will cause many troubles, he will be grateful. Heiyuan Supreme heard a glance and shook his head and said, Jian Wushuang, you can rest assured that I have communicated with all the players clearly, and they all agree to you as the deputy captain. Speaking of, the candidate for the deputy captain is admire that guy who personally recommended you. Seeing this, Jian Wushuang had no reason to refuse, and he stood up and arched his hand and said, Then Jian Wushuang, I would respect it better. Good. Heiyuan Extreme smiled and nodded. After a while, Jian Wushuang changed into a deputy captain's robe and token, and the members of the 7th team greeted one after another. Huncheng comes to autumn, and the sea changes. In the blink of an eye, 5,000 years passed. In these 5,000 years, Jian Wushuang led the 7th team, expeditions to the north and expeditions to the west, to suppress the extraterritorial battlefield. He continuously fought with Su Shi in the void of the void. In just 5,000 years he experienced nearly 10,000 battles. This made him understand more and more about Su Shi. In the past 5,000 years, the sealed three-headed snake Willow will not be abnormal at first, but the more the force remaining in Willow's body, the more violent it becomes. Especially when Jian Wushuang fought and fell into a state of weakness, the Willow will slam the seal frantically, trying to take away his physical body. Even once, the sword was double-faced against the 5-marked class Virtuoso, and after using Taro's sword, it was directly controlled by the power of the Willow. If Heiyuan's supremacy had suppressed him, and let the Zhou suppress it again, I'm afraid that on that day, Jian Wushuang would be completely demonized and kill the war. However, in these 5,000 years it is not without gain. Chapter 4461. Vitality. For Jian Wushuang, he now desperately needs an opportunity to understand the powerlessness. In his body, the magic spell left over by Willow has become more and more serious, and it will riot every once in a while. Although there is a god of chaos who will try to suppress it every time, he can never stay outside this domain in the future. On the battlefield, every time you wait for the help of Zhou God, right? This delusion will not be eliminated, and one day, sooner or later, it will cause a catastrophe. Therefore, Jian Wushuang had long wanted to find an opportunity to learn more about Xuli. Now this opportunity comes. There is no better chance to understand virtual force than to go deep into the virtual universe yourself. Wu Zhoushan glanced, looked at everyone's performance and said lightly, Are you afraid? This? Everyone look at me, I look at you without saying a word. In the battle of the catastrophe of that year, the master of the Life Palace was only half a step away from the of the universe, and the people led by him were all invincible. But Rao is so, none of them came out alive. Nowadays, everyone in the hall talks about cultivation, as a far cry from the master of the Palace of Life. How does going to the Palace of Life differ from death? For a moment, everyone hesitated. Master God, I am Heiyuan willing to go. At this moment, Heiyuan Supreme stepped out and said Shinsheng. One after another, several captains stepped out of the crowd. They are the leader of a team, and must set an example. When the of the gods saw this situation, they were already covered with Su Hanshuang's face. And then he eased down and said, people who travel to the virtual universe should not be inferior to the invincible supreme. Therefore, the 9 captains need not think about it. Go to the virtual universe, and be at ease to guard the extraterrestrial battlefield. As soon as his voice fell, the 9 captains could not help but stare at each other, and immediately said, Master God, what does this mean? The of the universe thought for a while and groaned and said, the magnetic field of the virtual universe is completely incompatible with the magnetic field of our universe. Those who live in our universe, the higher the cultivation, the more vulnerable they will be to exclusion and suppression, and the lower the cultivation, or the less repulsion and pressure. Therefore, your invincible supreme went to the virtual universe, but it was not easy to carry out. But the ordinary supreme passed away. It was not so conspicuous, and it was more convenient to act. Anyway, you went to the virtual universe this time, just to investigate in secret. It doesn't make much difference whether you are strong or not. Everyone heard the words, and that was all. After the god of Wuzhou finished speaking, he looked at some top supreme in the hall, and half-step invincible supreme, waiting to see who was willing to go. Standing at the end of the sword Wushuang, his eyes flashed. He knows it's his time. Master God, my sword Wushuang is willing to go to the virtual universe. Wu Jian stepped out step by step. Shinsheng said. After he finished speaking, he was still in a dark crowd, and suddenly he was about to move. I saw a flash of light in Bingyu Supreme's eyes, walked out of the crowd and said, Master God, I Bingyu is willing to go to the virtual universe, for the sake of the universe's life and death plans. I Bingyu willing to go to soup and fire, never die. After he finished speaking, he tilted his head slightly, glanced at Jian Wushuang, and sneered in his mouth. Long Qing, who was standing next to the captain of the 3rd team, also realized something, and met the eyes of Bingyu Supreme, and then said, Master God, I am also willing to go to the virtual universe. In the grand hall, the commotion suddenly became even greater. The contradiction between Jian Wushuang, Bingyu Supreme, and Long Qing has spread throughout the universe. Now Jian Wushuang has signed up for the virtual universe, and the two will immediately follow up. What do these two people report? A little guessing will make it clear. Bingao Long Qing, I'm afraid it's false for the two of you to go to the virtual universe. Is it true to end your personal hatred? He also sneered at King Jiujia, who was also in the hall. In the 5,000 years of this battle, in addition to the most dazzling performance of Jian Wushuang, the second one is the King of 9 Calamities. He, like Jian Wushuang, also has the ability to fight across borders. In an extraterrestrial battle 3,000 years ago, he killed a 4-marked dummy and was promoted to the 9th team vice-captain. Next moment, King Jiujia arched his hand and said lightly, Master God, this time traveling to the virtual universe, I must have a seat in Jiujin King. As soon as he said this, the turmoil in the hall was even worse. Wherever there are people, there are factions. In the battlefield outside the territory, there were no accidents. In these 5,000 years, in addition to the captain-level figures, 4 factions have been formed with the most dazzling performances of sword warriors, 9 kings, Bingyu Supreme, and Long Qing. Wang Jiujia Wang was originally indifferent to eyes and noses and hearts. He suddenly said that he was going to the empty universe just now. They naturally understood it. Wasn't that afraid that Jian Wushuang was in the virtual universe and was killed by Bingyu Supreme and Long Qing? For a while, people from these 4 factions kept coming out and threatened to go to the virtual universe. The whole hall was suddenly noisy. I looked at the temple that was boiling more and more against the sky, and God's face couldn't help glooming, and it was getting ugly. At last, Wu Zhoushan repeatedly patted the table and said coldly, Enough. Are you going to the virtual universe to swim in the mountains? How? Suddenly, the whole audience looked like a chill. They all bowed their heads, and the crickets no longer spoke. The light of the eyes of Wu Zhou shone for a while, and when he saw the crowd no longer speak, he snorted coldly. Let us go this time. The person who went to the virtual universe. The old man came to pick up yes. Everyone bowed his head obediently, and did not dare to speak. Lingyu Supreme. Extreme Ram. Morocco Supreme. The eyes of Wu Zhou glanced over the faces of everyone, and the soldiers were nodded. My Lingyu/Ram/Bingyu leads. The three of them immediately walked out of the crowd, and they should be. Jian Wuxuang saw this, his brows frowned. This time to the virtual universe he must go. As soon as he was going to take the initiative to ask him again, the god of God walked away and finally fixed himself on Jian Wuxuang. Sword unparalleled. My sword is unparalleled. Yin Jian's eyes twinkled. It should be. 4 of you set off 3 days later, through the fissures of the void, to the void universe, to inquire about the news. Wu Zhoushan said with a deep voice, with a big wave of his hand. The 4 people who traveled to the virtual universe this time were shot down. The 4 of you must remember that this is the main source of inquiry, and you must be extremely careful not to expose your breath. Otherwise, even the old man cannot save you. You will die. Finally, the Zhou looked deeply at the 4 of them. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.